Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. This is Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, historical, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest little neighborhood in all of Boston. We are so very happy and absolutely honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Audible, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We have an absolutely wonderful show for you today as we are waiting for the World Cup to begin here in the United States. Angela Cervantes is here to celebrate her new middle grade novel. It's called The Mystery of the Stolen World Cup Trophy. And later in the show, we keep the soccer action going with a listen back to a conversation we had with the author of Building a Dream, Dashna Kiani. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by When Fred the Snake and Friends Learn the Chinese Zodiac and the Great Race, written by Dr. Peter Cotton. Hey, did you ever wonder why 2025 was called the Year of the Snake? Well, get ready because Fred the Snake and Friends are about to take you on an unforgettable journey into the story of the Chinese Zodiac and the legendary Great Race. When Fred, Purdy, and Jack meet their new friends Connor and Ellie at school, they discover a story filled with adventure, teamwork, and a little bit of mischief. 12 animals race to reach the heavenly gate. The clever rat, the strong ox, the brave tiger, the soaring dragon, the determined snake, and all their friends racing for their place in history. Kids will love the excitement of the race, and families will love discovering the traditions, values, and celebrations of Chinese New Year together. From delicious feasts to dazzling dragons and lion dancing, this story is a joyful celebration of culture, friendship, and learning. It's more than a story, it's a chance to explore the world and celebrate what makes us all unique. Discover When Fred the Snake and Friends Learn the Chinese Zodiac and the Great Race today. Because every great story we share with our kids brings us a little closer together. Join us right now from the great state of Kansas. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new middle grade mystery. It's called The Mystery of the Stolen World Cup Trophy. Please welcome to the show, Angela Cervantes. Angela, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
You know, before we get into the mystery, I think I've solved the mystery of the Stolen World Cup Trophy. It's right over your shoulder there, isn't it?
Yeah, I have the ARC right now. I do not have the printed final version yet, but this is the galley version right here in front of me. So,
all right.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, it is very exciting. We have the World Cup is going to be starting here in the Boston area and all around North America in just a matter of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the fun begins in Mexico City. The first game is played on June 11th, I believe. And then it goes on through Mexico, the United States, Canada until July 19th, I want to say, is the final big game. And I believe that will be in New York, New Jersey, so very close to you. So you can just catch a train and go and see it if you want.
Well, I can catch a train and go and see it if I want, and I have $100,000 for
Exactly. I know. What a shame, right? It is super, super expensive.
It is crazy. And I attended the World Cup when it was last year in the United States, and the tickets were expensive then. But I was a kid, and my best friend's dad invited both of us, and I think the ticket was maybe $150. And I almost passed that when I saw that.
I know.
the prices for tickets, I mean, it's really outrageous.
They're outrageous. I've seen anything from, starting at 700 all the way to 15,000.
Yeah.
So, it's outrageous, and it's a bit of a shame because this is the world's game and you want everyone to go and attend. I will probably for the finale be hanging out at some bar, watching it with, fans and friends there because that seems like a fun way to do it and more affordable way to do it. But it's not going to stop me from watching the World Cup and getting all caught up in the excitement of it.
Yeah. Now, do you have a favorite team?
I do. I always root for USA, our women's team has done great at the World Cups, and now it will be fun to cheer on the men with their new coach, Pochettino, and he's Argentinian, and he's got a championship record as being a coach, and now he's our USA men's coach, so I expect great things from them. But I also really love Spain. I've seen them play a couple of times. I love all the players with Spain. Of course, Argentina being the return champions with, Messi. How exciting is that? Mm-hmm. And then I also will be rooting for I always root for Mexico too, because my family is from Mexico. We're kind of like the U.S. men's team. We don't go very far in the World Cup yet, but it's always exciting to watch us play and see what happens on the field. So those are kind of my teams. Spain, Argentina, love Brazil, love England, and I love Croatia. And I know people will be like, why Croatia? But there's a player named Luka Modric who I'm a huge fan of. He used to play for Real Madrid, and I just think he's amazing. And I just love their guts, and I love their underdogs kind of superpower that they bring to a match every game.
Yeah. Well, you obviously are a real fan, and you're not somebody that's just jumping on the bandwagon trying to write a timely novel.
Yeah, I mean, I have been in love with soccer. I never played it. I played it, but never for competitive reasons, just with friends hanging out. I'm not that great at it. I'm always worried about getting my shins kicked. I'm always afraid of being kicked. So that's not a good quality if you're going to go out there and play football. But I love to watch it. And growing up as a kid, knowing what soccer and football meant to my family and community. I grew up in a Mexican-American community in Topeka, Kansas. And, no one played soccer. It wasn't even in the schools yet when I was growing up. I'm showing my age. People play baseball and football, American football, but we didn't play soccer. That was just something fun you did in someone's huge yard or that we did by ourselves. Now, there's competitive teams in schools and everywhere. Kansas City here, we've got a women's team that's amazing, our Casey Currents and Sporting Casey, and we've got every school's got a soccer team, girl and boys. So that's fantastic. But that was not my reality growing up. And so we watched it on TV, and I used to know all the players, and I knew how important it was to my dad, my uncles to see their team win. And when they didn't win, that heartbreak, a defeat. And it just kind of was important to me because of what it meant to my family and community. So I just kind of always loved the game for that. It brings people together. It can break your heart, but it mostly just fills you with joy and hope. And the stories behind soccer are amazing.
Yeah. And it's wonderful. I played soccer in high school and college. Yeah. And I'm really glad that I'm really old and that when I started playing in high school and college, there weren't many teams, there weren't many people playing it because there's no way I would have made a team. I mean, because I was very, very comfortable knowing what I could do. I could run over people.
Yes.
Legally, and that's about it. And then I just kicked the ball ahead to somebody who had talent. And that was a blast. I don't think there'd be much room for somebody like me nowadays.
Well, you never know. There's a place for everyone somewhere on a team, so you never know.
But I love the fact, especially back then when I was a kid, that I was playing a game that I could literally go to any country in the world.
Yes.
And find people who would also want to play that game. Unlike, baseball is played in a lot of places, but not everywhere. Tennis is played in a lot of places, but not. Soccer is played everywhere.
Everywhere. You're absolutely right. I had not even thought of that point, but you're absolutely correct. You can go anywhere and pick up a little scrimmage game at any point that you want. Just need someone with a ball and you'll always find people who want to play with you. I love that. Gosh, that's a great point. Yes.
Well, and the other thing that I loved when I was growing up is mysteries. And
Yes.
so what a combination. The mystery of the stolen World Cup trophy. Who's going to help us solve this mystery?
So my main character is a young kid, 12-year-old Diaz Espada. And Diaz is named after the number 10 in Spanish. And he's named the number 10 because his dad is a huge Lionel Messi fan. And Lionel Messi, Leo, wears the number 10 when he plays for the Argentinian national team. So his dad is sort of a former soccer player in the college level, and he's really into soccer and wants young Diaz to become a soccer player like him. That's his dream. Mm-hmm. But on the other side of Diaz's parenthood is his mom, Clara, who was a librarian, and Clara used to run a mystery book club, and she raised Diaz loving mysteries, watching old Agatha Christie movies, reading the books, and he feels like sort of torn between making his father proud, making his mom proud. What does he want to do? But this has turned into a sort of passion for soccer and mysteries, which all sorts of collide in one night in Miami. So one night in Miami, he's luckily, very unexpectedly invited to a big, huge VIP reception for the World Cup. Miami is going to host the semifinals not the semifinals. What do you call it? The runner-ups, all right? The third and the fourth place, right? Countries. Before the final is played in New Jersey. And that third, fourth place runner-up game is always the day before. And at that game, at this very exclusive party, at this very fancy hotel in Miami, the cup is on display. The trophy is on display. There's a tropical storm coming through. All of a sudden, the lights go out and the trophy is gone. And all of a sudden, Diaz finds himself in a very interesting, he feels the need, and even though his dad is like, stay out of this, Diaz, let the professionals do their job, he cannot resist this mystery. Mystery runs in his blood, as he says. He gets it from his mom's side. And he loves soccer. He loves the trophy. How dare someone steal this trophy in the city where he was born and raised? How dare they? So he feels very much like he cannot resist helping to solve this case. And that's what starts the whole night in the book.
What a great way to start. I know as a kid, I'd be just devouring this book.
It's super fun because in my research, the whole idea was pegged by one, I love Agatha Christie books. I grew up with Nancy Drew books. My grandma had a whole collection, and even though they were kind of outdated and old-fashioned, I read them. I loved them. I love the whodunit moments where like the detective brings all the suspects into the room and you get to figure out who did it. I love that moment so much. The more drama, the better. But I also, when doing the research, I realized that the original World Cup trophy had gone missing twice. Well, actually, almost 3 times. Once in World War II, where the Nazis tried to steal it from Italy. Luckily, at the time, the FIFA commissioner hid it in a shoebox under his bed, and they couldn't find it. Then, when England was hosting the World Cup in 1966, now this is the original trophy. What they call the Jules Rimet. This is the trophy before the trophy we know today as the FIFA World Cup trophy. The Jules Rimet is French. It was named after the commissioner of FIFA. In 1966, it was put on display at Westminster Abbey in honor of the big World Cup being hosted there. Somehow, it goes missing. Some robbers break into Westminster Abbey, steal the trophy, and decide to write a ransom note. FIFA decides not to pay them a ransom, ignore the ransom notes. The robbers, with no choice, decide to just wrap it up in newspaper and throw it into a garden somewhere, like a lawn. And then one day, a dog named Pickles, cute little black and white mutt, is walking on his morning walk, sniffs out this newspaper, and finds the trophy. And this dog, Pickles, becomes like this nationwide hero for England. He was even in movies like Lassie. You remember Lassie?
Yeah.
Yeah, he becomes like such a great hero to England because this is the dog that found the World Cup trophy. And England ended up winning that World Cup that year. And so Queen Elizabeth is the one who got to hold that trophy and give it over to the players. So this is a big deal that that trophy was found. Now fast forward to 1970. A wonderful player named Pele from Brazil, the GOAT of all times, many people believe, definitely while he was alive and playing, he was the GOAT. He won the World Cup trophy 3 times for his country of Brazil. And there was an old rule that if you won it 3 times, you get to keep that trophy. So FIFA had given that Jules Rimet trophy to Brazil. And in 1983, they put it on display. And guess what? Some robbers break in, snatch that trophy, and the trophy is never found again. Gone for good. We've never seen the Jules Rimet since that night. And people have many theories about it. You can go down a pretty big Google rabbit hole on where people's theories about where, and some people believe it was melted down for its silver and gold. Some people think it's probably on some wealthy person's bookshelf somewhere, on display. We will never know. It's gone. And so that's that history, that very real history, true story is what inspired me to sort of combine soccer, my love for soccer, and my love for mystery novels.
Wow. Boy, I just got an education. I had no idea. And I agree. It's probably sitting on some rich guy's.
Yeah, right?
Some rich
Has to
guy's
be.
closet and it's like, oh, I paid all this money for this thing, but I can't show it to anybody. It's just there. So
Yeah.
What a waste.
Yeah, what a waste. And what a waste because it's just like everyone should, this is a game for the people. And that means the trophy is for the people. So we should all have our chance to see this trophy and celebrate this trophy.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Boy, it just, as you're saying, this is the people's trophy. It's a game. It just kind of brings me back to what we were talking about earlier, is that now this game here in North America is so out of reach of most people.
Yeah.
It's criminal, to be honest.
Yeah, there's been lots of complaints about the ticket costs, and I'm really hoping those ticket costs will come down. I think it's ridiculous. I have friends I know who are deciding to go see it in Canada or Mexico because they say the flights are actually cheaper than buying a ticket to watch it here in the United States. The hotel and flight and the ticket for the seat is actually cheaper. So those are options we have in North America if you can do those things. But a lot of us aren't able to do that, it's such a shame because it's like we want soccer to grow in this country. We want the love for the game to grow in this country. And I think you and I both have said that we've seen it growing in popularity. And now we've got this big chance to really celebrate it with a good men's team. And most of us won't even be able to see it, not live anyway, in a stadium, the way it should be enjoyed.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a 20-minute drive away from Gillette Stadium where there are 7 or 10 World Cup matches being played. And I didn't even try to get to just because there's no way I could justify paying that kind of money for it.
Well, you never know. I mean, maybe closer to the games, once teams start falling out, tickets will start going on sale, maybe cheaper. That's what I'm kind of hoping for. Here in Kansas City, we're going to be hosting 6 games. And one of the teams, I believe Argentina is one of our countries that we get here in Kansas City. So they'll be playing Algeria at some point, one of the first group stage games. And we're super excited because Argentina and England have chosen Kansas City as their base camp for the entire tournament. So that means these players will be staying in Kansas City at hotels. We might even see them running around. You never know. I imagine they'll be on a pretty strict schedule, training at our local soccer centers. But how exciting that Kansas City gets to host Argentina and the England team here. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm hoping to bump into someone. I would love to bump into some players.
That would be very cool. Argentina was a team that I saw play in the World Cup.
You did?
Yeah. Yes.
Was Maradona playing for that? Who do you remember? Or Apache or any of them like that?
Maradona was playing.
No.
Yeah.
That's legendary. I mean, Maradona is such a legend. He's classic soccer player.
He is. It was really sad the end of his life when his things kind of fell apart and he was making some poor choices.
Yeah, it is very sad. There's a great documentary about him for you and your all your fans out there. If you ever watch it, it's a beautiful documentary. I think it's out on Netflix, could be Apple, but it's a great documentary about his life. And it's while watching it as part of my research, because in this novel, I do drop a lot of Easter eggs about different players. I do mention real life players. I mean, besides Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi, the classic, rivalry, GOAT, battle between those two. I mentioned Maradona. I mentioned, some of Mbappe and Jenny Jr. and Vinny Jr. and all of these, up and coming players who are now considered the GOATs today. So, I did a lot of research into Maradona and other players, Pele, just to have more background for this book, to give it a little bit more historical presence, even though it's truly a fiction mystery novel.
I remember watching Pele. I think it was probably the third World Cup. It wasn't a big deal here. We saw it as part of Wide World of Sports, an old Saturday afternoon TV show that was an anthology. So I don't even think the whole show was dedicated to the World Cup finals. It was part of an hour-long show. Yeah. And I remember Pele scored I think it could have been the game-winning goal. That it was quite exciting. And that's when my interest, we kind of played it in phys ed when I was in, elementary and middle school. But I think that's what kind of opened up my eyes to like, oh, maybe when I get to high school and there's a team, maybe I want to play this game.
I love that. It's interesting because, as an author, I do a lot of school visits too. Mm-hmm. And every school I go to, the minute they ask me what my favorite sport is, and I say, oh, it's soccer. The kids are divided into camps, Leo Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. But I always bring up a picture of Pele just to show them with the trophy. And even though they're of this generation, they're young. Like we're talking 5th graders, 6th graders, 4th graders. They all know who Pele is still. They all know him. They're like, oh, that's Pele, and they all like clap and they scream. And I'm like, God, you guys know who Pele is. I don't know why I'm surprised. In fact, I'm not surprised anymore. Now I expect them to clap and shout when I pull up that picture of Pele. I mean, just kind of like iconic, legendary soccer player who was also a good guy off the field too. Just a very generous, compassionate person who seemed to live a very long life with really good sort of values and beliefs. Yeah.
One of the things, and I'll ask you, because obviously you've become quite the expert with all the research and love for the game. There's a tradition that the first time I saw it, I thought it was kind of weird, but they, for a lot of World Cup games and international games, they have young players, kids walk out with the players. Where did that tradition start, and is it just to kind of encourage the young people to play the game?
Yeah, I was doing research on that too because I was curious. How do they choose these kids, and where did that tradition start? And I'm not sure where it started. So that's another mystery out there. But I think part of it is that they, I know here in Kansas City, our professional teams, they choose the kids based on either kids, the board members or kids that are of special honor at schools that have done something really special. I know one of my friends' soccer team has been one of the group of kids that have gone out there with the players. And I think it's really fun. It has to be, I can't imagine any other reason. It's just to encourage young people to want to play soccer and all those values that being a good teammate and soccer teaches you, which is, call out when you see something wrong, stand up for yourself. Also, be a good teammate, share the ball, be generous with that ball. Just don't keep it to yourself. If you see someone open across the line, cross it over. Think about the rest of your teams, play as a team, communicate as a team. These are all good values that, come off the field that we can put into our real lives. And I think those are all the values that we try to, teach kids these days. So I love it when they walk out with those kids. I'm always so envious. I'm like, can adults do this too? Children's author. Hello.
I just saw I've seen it a couple of times that it just popped up on my feed on social media, a short video of a kid, Liverpool in England.
Yeah.
kid. He's a tiny kid that has some developmental disabilities,
Uh-huh.
and they bring him into the locker room, and he's meeting his favorite players, and then he walks out onto the field with his favorite player, and it was just a real beautiful, beautiful moment.
Those are the kind of beautiful moments that, like, I am a big crybaby and I start crying in moments like that. Like, I just love what that means to that child. You know what I mean? Like, they will never forget that. But also all of us witnessing that will never forget it. You know, like what it means to have an open heart, to be compassionate, to not be afraid of people who are different from us, have different disabilities than us. Instead, instead of being afraid or not sure what to do, just give them a hug, say hello to them like these players do. They're so generous with their time, and I appreciate it. That is a message for the world, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's incredibly obvious how passionate you are, not only about soccer, but also about writing mysteries. What other books have you created that you've poured this passion into?
So before this mystery book, I had a mystery book called, let's see if I have it with me here, but Me, Frida, and the Secret of the Peacock Ring. And that was my first mystery novel. That must have come out back in 2020, I want to say, 2019, 2020. And it did very well. And it's a mystery novel about a girl from Kansas who goes to Mexico City and gets involved in a mystery involving a ring that once belonged to the iconic artist Frida Kahlo. And it's all based in Mexico City, which was super fun because that meant I got to do all my research in Mexico City. And so I got to stay there, go visit Frida's house. And, the whole reason I wrote that was because after several school visits I had conducted, there was one year I conducted like 80 school visits in a year. And at every school visit, I always asked the kids, what kind of book should I write next? And all the kids were like, mystery, mystery. And I said, well, let me try it. And when I think of mysteries, I think of art that has gone missing, because art is always going missing all over the world all the time, right? We just learned that like from the Louvre recently in France, right? The big break-in. That's what I just said. Well, you know what? If I have to do it about missing art, I'm going to do it about one of my favorite artists, Frida Kahlo, based in Mexico City, and the girl's going to be from Kansas, and she reads mystery novels, and then just kind of gets entangled in figuring out where this ring went, who stole it, why. And so that was the first mystery novel I did, and everyone really loved it. It made a couple children's awards list, state children's awards list. And so in the back of my mind, I kept thinking I would love to write another mystery at some point in my career. And then this one just kind of, like a beautiful little treasure just showed up for me, like this missing trophy. It's happened before. Could it happen again? And if it did, could a young sleuth, a young detective find it on time before the big final game? So you'll have to read the book to find out. No spoilers here.
It's certainly possible. I mean, if Pickles can find the World Cup trophy, then I don't know why a 12-year-old can't.
Exactly.
I think, I love planting seeds in authors' minds. Not that any of them have grown yet, but if you're looking for another mystery, there's the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum here in Boston. Some Rembrandts went missing, and they're still been missing, but stolen back in the 1990s. And I think Pickles would be a great biography.
I did too. In fact, when I first read about Pickles, when I was doing research about World Cup, trying to find a real mystery, I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll do a picture book about Pickles, like a fun little mystery book with Pickles. But then it just kind of grew and grew into something else. Like, no, this is going to be a middle grade novel mystery, and it's going to be introduce a new detective. And it just kind of grew from there. But, I would never, ever say never to a book about Pickles. I just think he's such a fun little dog character. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned introducing a new character. Are you planning on creating a series with Diaz?
I would love to. I can already think up a bunch of future stories, but we'll see how the book does. Okay. If the book does, what matters most to publishers is how well the book does with the kids. Are they buying it? Are they enjoying it? Are they clamoring for a second one? And if they are, then they would probably be open to me writing another one. But I know that I am very ready to write another one. It was so much fun writing this one, and just plotting, crafting a mystery is just super fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you're going to run into one of the players at whatever your favorite local barbecue place is in Kansas City. Because I know there's so many of them.
Yes.
I visited Kansas City, Missouri, and we found one. And my wife and I just said, this is where we're going for the rest of the time that we're here.
Yeah, the barbecue is delicious here. You know, the sad thing is that I don't even eat red meat or pork, so I don't even get to partake of like all the delicious ribs and brisket, but I will kill some delicious barbecue chicken. I love it. And I do have a favorite place here. I have a couple favorite places here. There's one called Q39 that's amazing. And then there's one called, it used to be called Joe's Barbecue, but now I think it's something else. Oh, no, it used to be called Oklahoma Joe's, and now it's KC Joe's Barbecue. And it's inside of a gasoline station, and there's always a long, long line every day to go get barbecue there. But the line moves fast. So if you come to Kansas City, don't worry. That line moves fast. They are like a machine in there.
Awesome. Hey, let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the mystery of the stolen World Cup trophy and find out more about you.
Yeah, so you can go learn more about me and all of my books, including The Mystery of the Stolen World Cup Trophy at angelacervantes.com. You can follow me on Instagram. And this is a book that comes out May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And so it should be available wherever you buy books. So your favorite bookstore should have it on its shelf. And if it doesn't, simply request it and you can find that book.
And we always want to encourage our guests, even if you buy your own copy, go down to your local public library and say, hey, could you put this book on your shelves? It would be really cool.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I love about libraries. You don't have to spend a cent and they will order any book that you want for you. And you might have to wait a couple of days, but it's pretty fast. They can get that book into your hands.
Yeah. We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Mystery of the Stolen World Cup Trophy. It's the new middle grade mystery from our guest, Angela Cervantes. Hey, Angela, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog, Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place. Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. Returning to the podcast from the beautiful state of California, our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called Building a Dream, and it is a dream of a book. Please welcome back to the show, Darshana Kiani. Darshana, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you, Jed, for having me back. It is so wonderful, and I can't wait to talk about my latest book.
Yeah, we typically don't have a guest back on as soon. You were just on the show in the summertime. But this is such a wonderful story that I really did want to get it out there. The story takes place in southern Thailand. Pick it up from there, please.
Right. So there's a place in Phanaga Bay, which is in southern Thailand, and there's an island of Koh Phangan. And back in the 80s, so the late 1980s, there were a group of boys there. They loved playing soccer, to them known as football. And they played wherever they could. And they lived on a fishing village, which was built on stilts on the water. And so there really wasn't hardly any usable land. Maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, depending on the tides. But they wanted to get better. They would watch the World Cup and, the television and the cafe in their village. And they were like, we need to play. We want to compete with the mainland boys, but we need a place to play as a team. And so they went on a mission to figure out how to make that happen. And eventually they built their own floating soccer pitch out of scrap material that was available on the island. So scrap wood, plastic barrels that were used for the fishing rafts. And they made their own floating pitch, and they ended up forming an official team, and they actually became one of the best youth leagues in southern Thailand. And more importantly, they started a tradition that is still happening today. Like the two pillars of the community before soccer came along was fishing and their religion. They are Muslim. It's a Muslim community. But now they've added a third pillar, which is soccer.
That is so cool. I'm remembering back to when I played football, soccer, back in high school here in Boston. And my high school, we didn't have a home field, inner city school. And so we had to travel to another neighborhood. And at that time, we thought, we have to run, a mile and a half, 2 miles every day to get to our practice field and our game field. And, boy, that was such a hardship. But, compared to kids who are living in the water, who need to build a raft that they can play on, we didn't have it so hard.
Well, the fact that you had to run a mile and a half meant that you were that much stronger, too.
We agree. And that was the only thing we had going for us. Teams would come in and play us, and they would be terrified, not because we were skilled at all, but because they knew we would just run them and hit them until they got tired. But I digress. I think one of the things, we love to talk about the conversations that families can have when reading an author's book. And I think one of the first things that a family can start talking about is this idea that people live in houses in the water. They literally live on the water. They're there, their house is on stilts. They get from one home to another via a network of planks and, makeshift bridges and whatnot. I don't think a lot of people here in the States can really imagine that and get their heads wrapped around that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I thought was so cool. I mean, I learned about this story through a YouTube video. So, I was just amazed. And, I love what Dow's done. And she's done a really good job of capturing that feeling of what it's like to be in this village and what it looks like and how to get from one place to another, you have to find the right walkways to get around, kind of like Venice a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's just really cool because I think so often we take for granted of what people's lifestyles are like based on what our lifestyle is like.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of not a ton, but there's various children's books. I think there's a handful about how kids get to school, and it's the same thing. It's like, some have to take, a boat to school, or I think somewhere in the Alps, they have to take a tram to school, or, just all these cool things that you never think about. It's not the school bus. It's not the car. It's not riding your bike. Mm-hmm. It's something different.
Yeah, yeah. And Dow that you refer to, of course, is the illustrator, and the illustrations in the book are really wonderful. They really, I think, spark the imagination.
Yeah, their dreamlike quality, which is one of the things that was important for me, or that I expressed to my editor, is we sort of capture. I want somebody who can do the people, but this is also a book about the setting. and the environment and can capture the beauty of that place.
Yeah.
And she's done it, you know, with the color palette and, you know, the terrain and showing the mountain of the island and stuff with the water.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, I had an experience when my kids were much younger. We were sponsoring a young man who was studying to be a priest in India at the time. My kids were maybe 7 and 5, I think. And we were very invested in writing letters back and forth to this young man and learning about his life. And there was one day when we were in Costco, and it was a weekend, and we just literally walked through Costco. And we ate so many samples. We were, you know, we were filled, and we didn't have to go to lunch that day. And we were all joking about it. And we're in the van going home. And I said, you know, we probably ate more food for free walking through Costco today than a lot of people in Joby's Village get to eat in a week. And it was a really powerful kind of, I was going to say slap to the back of the head, but it was a real wake-up call for me and for my entire family to help us understand just how blessed we are. And I think that the kids who are, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old who love soccer and are playing on these state-of-the-art facilities that so many kids here in the States and Canada and other countries are playing on these days, this is a book that could really help open their eyes to the fact that we don't all have the same gifts and advantages. Some of us are greatly, greatly blessed.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that comes across. I mean, I do feel that sometimes it's really hard to appreciate what you have until you see the other side and can go deeper into it. Obviously, the best is personal connection and hearing personal stories. So this is, I would say this book can start those conversations, right? I would also encourage anyone who's read the book to go search for the videos, because that will make it even seem so much more real and to understanding the challenges. And, you know, these boys, I mean, they really wanted it and they really had to fight hard for it. There wasn't just the environmental challenges, right, of finding a place. It was also societal challenges of the community. They were like, why are you doing this? Our sport is boat racing. They have long-tailed boats, which the fishermen use, and, you know, taxi service or fishing, but they also get used for racing. And they're like, that's what we do. Why are you trying to do this? And so kids can appreciate that. But I think what I also want them really to get from the book is that anything's possible. I mean, so what if you don't have here? They didn't have a place to play. You know what? It didn't matter. They figured it out. And it's that you're always going to be faced with challenges for whatever it is you want. And it's up to you to persevere.
Yeah. The other thing that I think that this book and reading this book together as a family can kind of celebrate is the fact that, you know, here we do have these differences. Most of us who are listening live in the States. We have access to all these beautiful fields. Even kids who aren't wealthy have access to fields and different facilities and coaching and whatnot. These kids in Thailand had to build their own field. But the fact is, despite all those differences, we all love the same game. Yeah.
There's something about it. That's your common thread, right?
Yeah.
It's exercise. It's fun. It's competitive. I wished I could have played soccer. I didn't have it where I grew up as a kid.
Well, it is. It's a great game. It's amazing that it's not as popular here. Although I have to tell you, I played in the 70s, and I was really weird back in the 70s that I played soccer, and these days it's much more popular. There are many more kids that are involved in the sport. It is a great sport. It's a lot of fun. How did you find out about these kids and their amazing accomplishment?
So, as I mentioned earlier, there was a YouTube video. So back in 2013, there was a humanitarian commercial that was made by Thai National Bank, or Thai Military Bank, I forget, some bank. And they made a commercial, long format video about where they recreated this story that happened in the 1980s. And so I saw that video and I just loved it. I mean, I was just like, wow, I was amazed. I was like, this is really cool. I'm like, kids need to know about this. I mean, if these kids can do this, you can do anything type of a idea. And so then I just started researching, which was a really big challenge because this is not, something you learn in textbooks or anything, right? It's pop culture, sort of true story. But so it was a real challenge, but I did find a bunch of interviews that were done by various sports outlets online with the head of that village, which was one of the main guys on the team back in the 80s, and then found a few newspaper articles that I could reference. Yeah. But there was stuff missing, which is why or some holes in the research, which is why I was like, I don't feel comfortable saying this is nonfiction. So that's why I'm like, most of it's true, but not necessarily all of it. So it's inspired.
Inspired by. That brings up an interesting point. A lot of people who listen are aspiring authors. A lot of kids, a lot of people who are listening are kids, and they want to write. You bring up a good point. You don't always have to have access to the actual persons that were involved in the story in order to tell the story. Can you talk a little bit more about doing that? Of course, if somebody's not alive anymore, we don't have access to that person. If somebody's on the other side of the world and they don't have access to Zoom or phones, or you don't know their number, it's hard. So can you talk just a little bit about that in putting this story together without being able to interview the participants?
Yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, my first intention when I started the project was to do nonfiction, but it became really hard. I kept trying to reach out, trying to get to somebody in the village, and it just wasn't happening. I did look for other primary sources, so luckily those video interviews would be considered primary sources. Obviously the newspaper articles had some quotes, but most of it was secondhand. Normally the rule is, any fact you get, you want to be able to source it in 3 places. That wasn't going to happen in this case. And so then I looked at, why am I writing this story? It wasn't just to retell, it was to inspire. And then also to deepen that connection, I did include dialogue, which is made up. And I named the boys, even though I think I only knew 1 or 2 names of the actual players. So I was able to take some more leeway in order to create more of a narrative story and connect and build connection between the reader and the book. But so that's how other authors, how you can do it. And I do think it's important, at least for me, I like to be able to defend anything that's written. So it's important to me to have a source if I'm going to say something. Make sure it's right.
Right. You bring up a good point. We've talked here on the podcast about how important it is for parents to help their kids become media literate, to understand that we have to take the time to discern whether or not something that we're reading is reliable. And you mentioned that this story that you wrote, this story inspired by true events. And I think just sitting down and having a conversation with our kids about that phrase, when we see that phrase, inspired by, helping them understand that, yeah, this is based on something that really happened. It's based on real people, but this wasn't that person's name, and this isn't factual, and some of it is interpretation, and it was passed down. And I think those are really important distinctions for our kids to understand, and for us to start talking to our kids about at an early age.
Yeah, I think I think it's becoming more and more important because of the way information is consumed. And sometimes it's speed over quality, maybe, sometimes. I know personally with my kids, whenever we watch like a fiction or, because this happens a lot in movies, right? Where they'll be inspired by a true story, or even when we were watching Hamilton, the musical, it's like later we'll go dig, okay, what wasn't actually correct, or what was fudged for the sake of the show or the sake of the way the narrative was. And just to understand, because things are always much more dramatic in a book or in a movie than they probably were in real life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, we do need, and luckily the schools, they're doing a lot. I've seen it, of educating kids from an earlier age of how to process the information, how to verify the information, which I think is just going to continue.
Yeah, I think it's vital. I think it's vital. You're mentioning different movies. I'm really surprised when you mentioned that Hamilton didn't actually rap, way back then. I'm shocked. But I remember watching a movie about the Boston Marathon bombing, and there was one scene where Marky Mark gets in his car, and 2 minutes later he's on the other side of the city. I'm like, wait a minute, no, it takes even with lights and sirens, it takes a lot longer. You're talking about 3-4 different cities and whatnot. So, so I think that's important for kids to, again, it's important for kids to understand.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you have, you've created this wonderful story that's inspiring kids. Is that something that is important to you in your reading? In your writing? Are you always looking to find a story that's going to inspire kids to go and reach their dreams and be the best that they can be?
That's a really good question. I've never really thought. I have 3 books out now, I guess. For this one, it was inspiring. I don't know. I think if I were to look for a common thread across my books, I think it would actually be the word persistence. So, in this one, they have to persist against the challenges to achieve what they want, right? And How to Wear a Sari, which is my debut, she persists at trying to manage the 17 feet of fabric in order to drape herself. In that one, there's also the theme of, hey, it's always challenging, and when you do things for the first time, it may not always work out, but that's okay. That's how you learn. Mm-hmm. And then in I'm an American, it's just showing how we as people are persisting in this country, how the immigrants are faring, how whether new or old, and just how it is a challenge, but we keep marching forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so important. You know what else is important? To tell people where they can go to find out more about building a dream and find out more about all the things that are coming from your mind.
Thank you. So if people want to learn more about me, they can at my website, which is darshnakiani.com. And if they would like to get a copy of the book, they can go to their local libraries and see if it's there or request it. And it is sold at all the usual booksellers. But definitely go check out your favorite indie.
Yeah. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Building a Dream. Our guest has been Darshana Kiani. Darshana, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Leave a 5-star review and, of course, subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. All of those things really help us grow the audience, and we love welcoming new members to our Reading with Your Kids family. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Angela Cervantes. Please be sure to check out The Mystery of the Stolen World Cup Trophy. Also want to thank Darshana Kiani. Please be sure to check out Building a Dream. I want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Jackson Sotelera. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.